I broke up with him just to see if he'd fight for me. He didn't even ask why, just walked away. And honestly, I'm still not over it. I'm Samantha, 26, and this whole mess started about 6 months ago when I decided to test my boyfriend's love for me. Real smart move, right? Donovan and I had been together for a year and a half, and things were getting pretty serious. We'd met each other's families, spent holidays together, and were even starting to talk about moving in together. His parents absolutely adored me. His mom would always text me recipes, and his dad would save me the last piece of pie at dinner. His little sister basically treated me like the big sister she never had. I really thought we were building something real, but here's the thing about relationships, sometimes they get too comfortable, you know? We had our routines, our favorite takeout spots, our weekend traditions. It was nice, but where was the passion? The grand gestures? All my friends were posting these incredible stories about how their boyfriends surprised them with weekend getaways, or wrote them songs, or fought to win them back after arguments. Meanwhile, Donovan was just reliable, steady. He showed up when he said he would, and remembered my birthday, and was good with my friends. But I started wondering, would he actually fight for me if he had to? I'd scroll through social media and see these couples having these dramatic reconciliations after fights, and something inside me got jealous. Like, how do you know someone really loves you, unless they have to prove it? Donovan never had to prove it, because I never really pushed him. He had it too easy with me, that's what I started thinking. And once that thought took root, I couldn't shake it. So, I picked a random Tuesday evening. We'd had a perfectly nice weekend together, nothing special, but nothing bad either. I figured the unexpectedness of it would really drive home how serious I was, and therefore how seriously he needed to take winning me back. I rehearsed my speech, practiced looking sad but determined in the mirror, and invited him over to my place. I was about to discover exactly how much Donovan really loved me. Or so I thought. When Donovan arrived at my apartment, he looked relaxed, completely unaware of what was coming. He leaned in to kiss me hello, like always, but I turned my face so he caught my cheek instead. I could see the confusion flash across his face. Good. I thought, he's already sensing something's wrong, this is going to work perfectly. Donovan, I've been doing a lot of thinking about us, I said, trying to sound somber and definitive. And I just don't think this is working anymore. I want to break up. I paused, waiting for the shock, the questions, the protest. In my head he was supposed to look stunned, maybe even tear up a little. He'd ask what went wrong, tell me how much he loved me, insist we could work through whatever was bothering me. But that's not what happened at all. Donovan just looked at me for a long moment, his expression shifting from surprise to something else, something calm and almost resigned. Then he said, okay. Just that. Okay, like I'd told him I didn't want Italian for dinner. I stared at him, waiting for more, but he just sat there, processing. No tears, no begging, no questions about why, just quiet acceptance. I felt my stomach drop. This wasn't the script I'd written in my head at all. That's it? I finally asked, unable to hide my disbelief, just okay? He shrugged, looking a little confused by my reaction. Well, if that's how you feel, I'm not going to try to change your mind. I respect your decision. Respect my decision? Who asked for respect? I wanted passion. I wanted him to fight for me. I felt my cheeks get hot as anger. And embarrassment flooded through me. This was not how this was supposed to go at all. So you're just going to walk away? Just like that? After a year and a half together? I meant that little to you? Now he looked genuinely puzzled. I don't understand, you just said you wanted to break up. I'm trying to respect that. You're supposed to fight for me. I finally blurted out, too frustrated to maintain the charade. You're supposed to care enough to at least ask why or try to change my mind. His expression changed then, a flash of something, hurt, realization, disappointment crossing his face. Wait, was this some kind of test? I couldn't admit it outright. No, I just thought if you really loved me, you'd at least want to know what went wrong, instead of just accepting it without a word. Donovan stood up slowly, running a hand through his hair. Samantha, relationships don't work like that. You can't just say you want to break up when you don't mean it and expect me to somehow read your mind. I think I should go, he said quietly after a moment. I'll box up anything of yours that might be at my place, you can pick it up whenever. Or I can drop it off. That's when I really panicked that he was actually going to leave. So that's it? You're just going to walk away, after everything we've been through? Donovan paused at the door and looked back at me. You said you wanted to break up? I'm respecting your decision, what else am I supposed to do? You're a cold-hearted jerk who was just using me this whole time, I shouted, desperate to get some kind of emotional reaction from him. You never really loved me at all. He just shook his head. I'm not going to do this, Samantha. When you're ready to have an honest conversation, let me know. But I don't play games, and then he left. He actually left. No tears, no begging, no grand gestures. He just walked away like I hadn't just detonated our entire relationship. I spent that night alternating between crying and fuming, waiting for a call or text that never came. By morning, I was convinced that his reaction just proved what I'd suspected all along. He didn't love me enough. A man who truly loved a woman would never let her go that easily, right? The next few days were a blur of checking my phone, jumping every time it buzzed, only to be disappointed when it wasn't him. I started wondering if maybe I'd made a terrible mistake, but my pride wouldn't let me admit it. Not yet. 3 days after our breakup, I got a text from Donovan's sister asking what had happened. Apparently, he'd told his family we were over but hadn't given many details. His mom was upset. She'd really liked me, great, I thought. Now his whole family probably thinks I'm the bad guy. I needed to get control of the narrative fast. The morning after our breakup, I was already spinning the story to my friends. He just didn't care enough to even ask why. I told my best friend Alyssa over coffee, can you believe that? I tell him I want to break up and he just says okay and leaves. No questions, no nothing. Alyssa frowned, stirring her latte. Wait, so you wanted to break up with him, but you're upset that he accepted it? I rolled my eyes. It's not about that. It's about the principle. If he really loved me, he would have at least wanted to know why or tried to fix things. As the days passed, I carefully crafted my version of events for different audiences. To his sister, I said there had been problems brewing for a while. To mutual friends, I hinted that Donovan had been emotionally unavailable. To coworkers, I shrugged and said sometimes things just don't work out. Each time, I positioned myself as the reasonable one who had tried to make things work while painting Donovan as cold and indifferent, but not everyone bought my story. His sister Megan called me a week after the breakup. I talked to Donovan, she said without preamble. He told me what really happened. My stomach dropped. I don't know what he told you, but he said you broke up with him as some kind of test to see if he'd fight for you, she interrupted. Is that true? That's not. He's twisting what happened, I sputtered. Stop lying, Samantha. Megan said, her voice uncharacteristically hard. Do you have any idea how manipulative that is? To end a relationship you don't actually want to end just to test someone's reaction? She hung up and I stared at my phone in shock. How dare she speak to me like that? And how dare Donovan tell her the truth instead of sticking to my version of events? I immediately posted a vague but clearly sad status on social media. Sometimes the people you think care about you the most are the first to walk away when things get tough. I added a broken heart emoji for good measure. The likes and sympathetic comments poured in. You deserve better, one friend wrote. His loss, said another. This was more like it, the validation I craved. But not all my friends were so supportive. My roommate from college, Jade, who had always been painfully honest, texted me privately. Did you actually want to break up with him, or was this some kind of test? It's not wrong to want someone to fight for you, I texted back defensively. No. But it is wrong to manipulate someone like that, she responded. If you wanted more romance or reassurance, you should have just told him. As the days turned into weeks with no contact from Donovan, reality began to sink in. He wasn't going to come crawling back. He wasn't going to show up at my door with flowers. He wasn't going to blow up my phone begging for another chance. I'd broken up with him, and he'd simply accepted it and moved on. That's when the panic really set in. I might have actually lost him for good. And over what? A stupid test that any reasonable person would see through? What had I been thinking? But I still couldn't bring myself to reach out and admit my mistake. My pride wouldn't let me. Instead, I doubled down on my social media campaign, posting photos of nights out with friends, new outfits, fancy drinks, all carefully curated to show Donovan, who I knew still followed me, that I was living my best life without him. In reality, I was checking his profiles obsessively, looking for any sign that he was miserable without me. But his posts remained frustratingly normal: work updates, a hiking trip with friends, photos of a new dish he'd cooked. No sad songs, no melancholy quotes, nothing to indicate he was pining for me. 1 month after our breakup, I still hadn't heard directly from Donovan. I'd run into a few mutual friends who had seen him, and their reports were infuriating. He seems good, they'd say. Or worse, he asked about you, hopes you're doing well, hopes I'm doing well. He should be devastated. I decided it was time to orchestrate a chance encounter. I knew his routine, where he got coffee on Saturday mornings, which grocery store he preferred, his favorite bookstore. I started frequenting these places, dressed to kill, hoping to bump into him accidentally. After 3 tries, it finally worked. I spotted him at the local farmer's market, examining some apples at a produce stand. My heart raced as I approached, trying to appear casual. Donovan, what a surprise, I said, feigning shock at seeing him. He looked up, momentarily startled. Samantha, hi. How have you been? I asked, stepping closer. I'm okay, he said with a small nod. You? Oh, keeping busy, I said with a practiced laugh. Listen, I think we should talk about what happened. It was just a big misunderstanding, Donovan raised an eyebrow. A misunderstanding? I nodded eagerly. Yes, I didn't really want to break up. I was just going through something. Having a bad day, you know how it is. So you didn't mean it when you said you wanted to end our relationship? He asked, his voice measured. Not really, I admitted, sensing an opening. I was just testing you, I guess. Seeing if you'd fight for me. Something shifted in his expression then. A hardening around the eyes, a slight tightening of his jaw. I've been seeing a therapist these past few weeks, he said, again, surprising me, talking about our relationship, about patterns I didn't notice before. You're in therapy because of our breakup? I asked, hope rising. Maybe he was devastated after all. Not exactly, he said. I'm in therapy because I realized I have a pattern of being with women who test me instead of communicating directly, who expect me to read their minds, who create problems so I can solve them and prove my devotion. I felt my face flush. That's not what When you broke up with me as a test, he continued calmly, it was like a wake-up call. I realized how unhealthy our dynamic had become, how I was always trying to guess what you really wanted instead of you just telling me. I respect myself too much now to go back to that, he said. If you really care about someone, you don't play games with their feelings. It wasn't a game, I protested. I just needed to know you cared. By hurting both of us, he asked. That's not love, Samantha. That's insecurity. I felt tears sting my eyes. So you're saying there's no chance for us? Donovan sighed. I'm saying I need someone who says what they mean and means what they say, who doesn't use breaking up as a manipulation tactic. He paid for his apples, wished me well, and walked away again, only this time it felt much more final. I stood there among the weekend shoppers, feeling oddly hollow. He'd changed somehow in our weeks apart, become more certain, more grounded. Meanwhile, I was still playing the same games, expecting different results. For the first time, I wondered if maybe, just maybe I was the problem, but that moment of self-awareness was fleeting. As I walked home alone, I convinced myself that Donovan was being unreasonable. So I'd made one mistake. Was he really going to throw away everything we had over it? If he really loved me, he would forgive me, right? This thinking started a downward spiral that consumed the next several weeks of my life. I became obsessed with getting Donovan back. Not because I had actually learned from my mistake, but because his rejection only made me want him more. The fact that he was moving on while I was stuck made me frantic. I started texting him more frequently, casual at first, then increasingly desperate. His responses grew shorter and less frequent until finally he asked me directly to give him space, but I couldn't. I convinced myself that persistence was the key, that if I showed him how much I cared, he'd have to take me back. I read articles about winning back an ex, joined forums where people shared reconciliation success stories, even bought a book called Make Him Come Crawling Back. My friends started to distance themselves as all I talked about was Donovan and my plans to get him back. My work suffered too. I was late 3 times in 1 week because I'd stayed up all night stalking his social media and slept through my alarm. Then came the breaking point. I heard through a mutual friend that Donovan had been promoted at work, something he'd been working toward when we were together. In my twisted logic, I decided this was the perfect opportunity to congratulate him in person. I showed up at his workplace around closing time with a small gift and a card. I'd put on his favorite dress of mine and spent hours on my hair and makeup. This would remind him of what he was missing, I was sure of it. When he walked out of the building and saw me waiting, his expression wasn't pleased or even surprised. It was wary. Almost resigned. Samantha, what are you doing here? He asked, glancing around uncomfortably as colleagues passed by. I heard about your promotion, I said brightly, holding out the gift. I wanted to congratulate you in person. This isn't appropriate, he said quietly. I asked you to give me space. But I'm just being friendly, I insisted, feeling desperate as I saw the plan crumbling. We can still be friends, right? No, Samantha, we can't, he said firmly. Not right now. A few of his coworkers had slowed their pace, obviously eavesdropping. Embarrassment and anger flooded through me. Fine, I said, my voice rising. Keep acting like you're so perfect, like you never made any mistakes in our relationship. I'm going to go now, Donovan said, his voice controlled but tight. Please don't come to my workplace again. As he walked toward the parking lot, something in me snapped. I followed him, raising my voice. You think you're too good for me? Now? With your fancy promotion, you wouldn't even have applied for it if I hadn't encouraged you. He turned back and for the first time, I saw real anger in his eyes. Stop. Now. A small crowd of his colleagues had gathered, watching the spectacle I was creating. One woman stepped forward. Should I call security, Donovan? The humiliation of that moment hit me like a physical blow. I'd become the crazy ex. Making a scene in public, the gift fell from my hands as I turned and hurried away, tears streaming down my face. Later that night, I received a text from Donovan. "Don't contact me again. If you do, I'll have to take more formal steps to enforce that boundary." He was threatening me with a restraining order. Me, the woman he'd said he loved just a few months ago. It was too much to bear. I shut myself in my apartment for the entire weekend, ignoring calls from concerned friends, eating ice cream straight from the container, and watching sad romantic movies where the guy always came back in the end. But as Sunday evening approached, a hard truth began to settle in my gut. Donovan wasn't coming back, and maybe, just maybe, this whole situation was more my fault than I wanted to admit. 6 months after our breakup, I was invited to a housewarming party thrown by mutual friends. I knew there was a chance Donovan might be there, but I'd been avoiding social gatherings for so long that I decided to risk it. Besides, I looked good these days. I'd lost weight, mostly from stress, and bought a new outfit specifically for occasions where I might run into him. I arrived fashionably late, making an entrance I hoped would be noticed. The host Taylor greeted me warmly and led me to the drink table. As I scanned the room, that's when I saw him. Donovan was standing by the window, laughing at something someone had said. But it wasn't just any someone. It was a woman I didn't recognize, pretty in an effortless way, with a genuine smile that reached her eyes. "Who's that?" I asked Taylor, trying to sound casual. "Oh, that's Donovan's girlfriend, Rachel," Taylor said. "They've been dating for a couple months now. She's really cool. You'll like her?" The room seemed to tilt slightly. Girlfriend? He had a girlfriend already? I downed my drink in one gulp and immediately reached for another. Throughout the evening, I watched them together from across the room, the way he looked at her. The casual intimacy of his hand on the small of her back. The way she made him laugh. A real, genuine laugh I recognized from happier times. The worst part wasn't that he had moved on, it was how healthy they looked together. There was none of the drama that had characterized our relationship. They communicated easily, checking in with each other without seeming clingy. When she spoke, he listened attentively. "They're good together, aren't they?" a voice said beside me. I turned to find Megan, Donovan's sister, watching me with a knowing look. "I guess," I said, trying to sound indifferent. "He's happy," she said, "happier than I've seen him in a long time." The implication hung in the air between us. Happier than when he was with me. "Good for him," I said tightly. Megan sipped her drink. "You know, the whole story came out, about why you two really broke up. My stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" "Your test," she said. "How you broke up with him just to see if he'd fight for you. I mentioned it to Taylor months ago, and you know how news travels in this group." Horror washed over me as I realized why some people at the party had been giving me strange looks. They knew I was the toxic ex who played mind games. "That's not exactly how it happened," I started, but Megan cut me off. "Save it," she said. "I'm just telling you so you understand why some doors are permanently closed to you now." She walked away, leaving me standing alone, clutching my drink like a lifeline. Across the room, Donovan and Rachel were preparing to leave, saying their goodbyes. He hadn't spoken a single word to me all night, hadn't even acknowledged my presence. As they passed near me on their way out, Rachel smiled politely. She had no idea who I was. I realized. Donovan's eyes met mine for a brief moment, and I saw no anger there. No resentment, not even discomfort. Just nothing, complete indifference. I had become a stranger to him. That night marked the beginning of my social exile. Invitations dwindled. Friends became busy when I suggested getting together. The story of my manipulation had spread, cementing my reputation as someone who couldn't be trusted in relationships. At work, my pattern of deception extended to taking credit for colleagues' ideas, a habit I hadn't even realized I had until my manager called me out on it during a performance review. "There's a concerning pattern here," she said. "This needs to stop, or we'll have to reconsider your position with us." A week later, I ran into Alyssa at a coffee shop. I hadn't seen her in months. She'd been among the first friends to distance herself after the party. "How are you?" I asked, genuinely hoping to reconnect. "Busy," she said, not meeting my eyes' look. "I should go." "Wait," I said, suddenly desperate. "Have you heard anything about Donovan?" She sighed. "Samantha, you need to move on, he has." "I know with Rachel," I said, unable to keep the bitterness from my voice. "They're engaged," Alyssa said. "He proposed last weekend." The news hit me like a physical blow. Engaged? After just 6 months. Together? We'd been together for a year and a half, and he'd never even hinted at marriage. As I watched her leave, the full weight of what I'd lost crashed down on me. Not just Donovan, but friends, respect, trust, all sacrificed on the altar of my pride and insecurity. For the first time, I had to face the possibility that I might have been wrong, that my test wasn't just a harmless way to gauge Donovan's feelings. It was a manipulative power play that revealed more about my character than his. But even this realization came with a qualifier. If only he had understood what I really meant. If only he hadn't overreacted. If only he had given me a second chance. I still couldn't fully own my mistake. Couldn't accept that the consequences I was facing, the loneliness, the damaged reputation, the lost relationships, were entirely of my own making. And that's why, 6 months later, I'm still alone, watching from the periphery as life goes on without me. Donovan is building a future with Rachel. My friends have moved on to more healthy relationships. My career has stalled, as my reputation for untrustworthiness has followed me there too, all because I broke up with him just to see if he'd fight for me, and he didn't ask why, just walked away. It turned out to be the smartest thing he could have done. For him, not for me, never for me.